For the first time heading into the new season, we hear from Gopher stars Darius Taylor, Max Brosmer, and Daniel Jackson what they have to say ahead of the new year, and then why this year's schedule actually makes me happy.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, this offseason, we've been only about 3 shows a week, but August will be here before you know it. And once we hit August, we are back to 5 shows every week, every weekday, giving you Gophers daily content. We're going to break down every single opponent on the Gophers schedule in depth, new additions, transfers out, coaching changes, you name it. And we're going to break down every position group for the Minnesota Golden Gophers and where they stack up within the Big Ten Conference, in my opinion. So definitely be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of that content once we hit the August month. But this week, we had Gophers Media Days where Darius Taylor, Max Brosmer, Daniel Jackson, among others, all spoke to the media for the first time of the new season. And we got some tidbits, we got some little inklings here and there, things to know about heading into this season, things to know about the process and the portal and all of that. And so definitely some fun facts for Gopher fans overall. Then we're going to talk about 3 factors that will make or break the season in 2024. And finally, I got to talk about why I am thankful for the Minnesota schedule. Some people talk about how hard it is. I am very happy with how it rolled out for the Gophers, and I'll tell you why on today's show. But first, let's talk about the Gophers Media Days. Let's talk about what we heard from some of these Gopher offensive stars. We'll start it with Darius Taylor, who talked to the media, and he mentioned in his Q&As with the media, he mentioned that there will very likely be a running back by committee, and how this room was very talented and that they will definitely probably be using a committee style approach. Now, he'll obviously be the lead back if that is to happen, but to be honest, we've never seen a true committee under PJ Fleck in his time here with the Gophers. Now, this will be going into year 8. So something we haven't seen over years 1 through 7. It makes me a little skeptical, a little hesitant to fully buy into that notion. Of course, you'd want to put it out there, maybe not only to keep your players happy, but on the flip side for other schools, if they're listening, if they're breaking down this type of stuff, to think, okay, we have to prep for multiple backs. We need to look at who else is on the 2 deep and who else could be a problem and what to expect. So it gives teams more to look into or more to prepare, as opposed to, hey, yep, we got a workhorse and we're going to run the ball to him until he gets gassed. So overall, it's not surprising to hear, but I don't know if I quite believe it at this point. Now, the closest we've seen to more of a committee style approach was 2021 and 2023, but it wasn't by choice. It was by injuries and default. But on top of that, even with those injuries and default, you still saw kind of a main one-horse running back with a complementary back helping him out. That's what we've seen a lot of Coach Fleck's time here. 2021 maybe is the closest to a committee where we really saw, after Mo went down, and then after Potts went down, and then after Bryce went down, we saw kind of a committee style approach between Bucky Irving and his fellow redshirt freshman, and not true freshman like Bucky, and Kai. So overall, I think between those 2 running backs, that was the closest to an almost committee approach that we saw. But you haven't really seen that from Coach Fleck, and I wouldn't put my bets on it to happen now. Until I see it, I'm not really going to think it's true. I think Darius Taylor will be closer to getting 25 carries a game minimum, maybe creeping up to 30 depending on the game plan and the situation, but I think Darius Taylor is going to have a heavy workload. Now, that being said, I still think there will be a complimentary running back that gets worked in, and I've always talked about, could it be C.A. Bangura or could it be Jordan Nubin? I think one of those 2 stands out as a complimentary back, and then the other on this roster, on this 2 deep, like Marcus Major, like whoever doesn't make it between Bangura and Nubin, probably is more of a depth piece who gets occasional touches, but isn't really featured by any stretch or any means. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully the room can stay healthy overall. That is priority numero uno. Now, on top of that, Darius Taylor also said that he really wasn't looking to leave Minnesota. Now, of course, he's not going to put it out there like, oh, yeah, I was trying to get out, but then they offered me money. He wouldn't put anything out there like that. But some folks, some kids, some athletes might have been like, I wanted to see what offers were out there. I wanted to hear and get ideas of what my value could be. But in the end, I really wanted to be here in Minnesota. That's not the approach he took. He said, I wasn't looking to leave Minnesota at all. I didn't have any intention of going. Minnesota feels like a family, and they are the place that has kind of raised me as far as my football landscape. And on top of that, he said, they can run the ball. So why wouldn't I like that? It really sounds like Darius Taylor really wanted to be here. He didn't have thoughts or intentions of leaving. And you know what? Hopefully that continues to remain true even after the 2024 season, because he is the face of this offense and the wheel that keeps the Gophers offense going. So Darius Taylor, love to hear that from him. He also talked about being a pro before becoming a pro is definitely pertinent to him. And he talked about how last year was really a year of growth for him, a year of understanding for him, and seeing what it takes to play at the speed, how it takes on your body and its toll, and getting ready for it, and has changed his approach to this offseason and how he's gone about preparation. So that should only help Darius Taylor in the long run, and hopefully that means we see a fully healthy, ready to go Darius Taylor for an entire season. Now, he also said he was very excited at the thought of getting more involved in the passing game. And that's something you love to hear, because if there is moments last year where, for years, we've been asking for the running backs to get more involved in the passing game. Last year was the first time where we saw it happen more consistently, but still not a whole lot. But when it did happen, and the timing of it happening last year, they were almost always big plays for the running backs who are getting the receptions out of the backfield. So if the Gophers can get that more incorporated into their offense, it could be big time for them. And on top of that, we've seen the production from Max Brosmer to his running backs in the receiving game. And Darius Taylor said if it's there and if it's in the progression for Max, he is going to throw it with no hesitation, and that gets him excited. So definitely good tidbits in there from Darius Taylor. Now moving over to Max Brosmer and what he said, he talked about his relationship with Harbaugh, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and how they are very, very close, and that should help translate to a stronger and more fluid offense this fall, which makes sense with them having the headset communications and the iPads or tablets being able to be viewed from the sidelines. That should help him serve as a extra voice of the offense and how they really want to make this thing go. We'll see if the passing game can be fixed and picked up. But overall, he talked about that the drive and the want to get better is felt by every single person on this team this summer. And you don't always get that from a program. And people understand that there is a limit of time they have before the season kicks off, and they are trying to make the most of each and every opportunity that they can. Now, on top of that, he talked about the work ethic and how the work ethic is everything, and how this team is attacking every rep. They don't want to be what they were last year. They felt very average, and how they want to overcome that feeling and overcome what had been set up from last year. And it's not about waiting until fall camp. It's about attacking every single day, every single rep, every single time throughout the summer, throughout the spring, throughout the winter, you name it. But it doesn't just start in fall. And you love that approach, that attitude from your quarterback, but also from the entire team. Now, on top of that, Max Brosmer talked about how he was really impressed with freshman backup Drake Lindsey, and how he wants to come in and he wants to learn as much as possible on both the field and in the boardroom. He talked about how Drake Lindsey reminds him a lot of himself and his eagerness and his wanting to learn and soak up knowledge. So that has been very impressive for him on that front, and that should be music to Gophers fans' ears. Now, on top of that, he talked about the adjustments that he has had to make, and everybody talks about the speed from FCS to FBS, which we talked about here on the show, that we need to stop worrying about that when it comes to Max Brosmer. But Max Brosmer talked about how everyone talks about the speed difference, and he feels like that's gone. He feels like he's gotten through that since the spring. And he talked about really the main difference from FCS to FBS that he keeps in mind, or he has noticed more often throughout his work and his reps, is that Every position is very athletic and very smart. So you can't necessarily pick on a weak spots as much at this league because they have the athletes and the fluidity to cover or make things a lot more difficult. Now, on top of that, he talked about how staying on schedule is huge for completing explosive plays, which the Gophers suffered from last year. And a lot of the situation dictates when you can take explosive opportunities, but then also it leads to being on the same page is all in the smaller details. So love to hear these things. It sounds like the Gophers are starting to get that chemistry built out. He says that he can feel the chemistry is building, coming together as since they took those trips to Georgia as a unit and everybody wants to be together. But then the final two things he talked about is the things that stand out in his game is he is meticulous. Meticulous is all get out, and that he needs to keep the offense on track and be on schedule. And that's what you'll see from him on the field this upcoming season. And then finally, how he has been impressed by the entire wide receiver room and their grind to learn all positions, both inside and outside, which will hopefully allow Minnesota to spread the ball around more. Now, finally, we heard from Daniel Jackson, and the couple of takeaways we got from him. He was impressed by the depth of the wide receiver room, and it is the deepest he has seen in his time here. He embraces the challenge of teams trying to take him away and doing whatever he can to help this team be successful, whether that be running decoy routes or being the guy to get it done. On top of that, he was very complimentary of Elijah Spencer, mentioned that Elijah Spencer just needs to be himself and play with confidence, and everything will happen and everything will work out for him. Consistency was the big thing from Daniel Jackson when he talked about getting the passing game going. He said they need to find more consistency, and you can't let previous mistakes or drops or anything deplete them, but it needs to be a next play, next drive mentality. On top of that, Daniel Jackson mentioned Tyler Williams, the transfer from Georgia, is a freak and a playmaker, and that he has all the physical tools and all the physical play style. You can see that in his play. He just needs to continue refining his routes, which will Matt Simon will work wonders with him in his time here. Now, finally, he described Max Brosmer, the quarterback, as a commander and a general, a peer leader that commands the room. And he said that the things that stand out for Max Brosmer in his mindset, he says he has the arm talent, he has the ability, but his mentals are unmatched. He talked about his mentals and his mindset. That is what impresses him the most, and once again, are unmatched. So those were the takeaways from today's Gophers Media Day from those three offensive stars that I definitely wanted to jump into on today's show. Now, next, we're going to talk about the three factors that will make or break the Gopher season in 2024. So stick around because that's what's coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, because right now, all customers can get a boost or a bonus daily from FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is hooking customers up all summer long with a boost or a bonus every single day. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So you definitely need to head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. And you can bet on anything that's going on right now, from the MLB, which FanDuel is a betting partner of the Major League Baseball, on top of the WNBA, the Olympic basketball will be going, other Olympic sports will be going. You've got the summer league going on right now. There's still a lot of sports betting opportunities for you. And if you're like, I'm ready for football, I'm ready for college football, NFL football, you name it, well, you can dream up any bet right now, because sports might not be sportsing the way you want them to, but FanDuel lets you keep going whenever you want. So go to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and official sports betting partner of Locked On. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about the three factors that will make or break the 2024 season for the Minnesota Golden Gophers this upcoming year. Now, the first one that I'm going to bring up is that, can the defense get off the field on third down? That's the biggest one, in my opinion. Yes, pressure and sacks will matter. Yes, creating turnovers will matter. Yes, preventing explosive plays will matter. But when it's all said and done, I think the level of elite defense will all depend on if the Gophers can have an elite third down defense. If they can, then things will start to work in their favor throughout the season. The turnovers will come, the pressure will come, and what have you. But if the Gophers can get off the field on third down, that's where they will thrive and strive to be even better in this next upcoming season. But more importantly, like I said, everything relies on third down. That is a trait which made the Gophers defense elite in the handful of years with Joe Rossi, aside from last season, because it leads to other things as well. It leads to turnovers. It leads to pressure opportunities. It leads to sacks. But getting off the field on third down would have single-handedly turned around possibly up to 3 games for the Gophers last season. Definitely Northwestern, definitely Illinois, and potentially the Purdue game, where Minnesota couldn't get off the field and was 6 of 12 on opportunities on third and fourth down in efficiency. Now, Minnesota also needs to get off the field on third down because it puts the ball back in their offense's hands and allows them to play that physical play style that they want to, where they're grinding down the clock, keeping time of possession at the top of the charts for the offense, and really being able to control the entire game. So that's what Minnesota and Coach Fleck love to do. So if they want to do that and they want to be successful at it, they have to find a way to get off the field on third downs, and creating chaos and pressure will help lead to those more successful third downs. So overall, third down is the key when it comes to the Minnesota defense and how successful they can go. Now, flipping it to the offense, point number 2 of make or break for the 2024 season is if Minnesota can pass for 2,500 passing yards, that will lead to a more successful offense and to more wins. Now, I'm not saying throw it a million times. I'm not saying you have to be an air raid attacker or anything like that. What I am saying is, if you start to find success in the passing game to an extent, and you have 2,500 passing yards, which the Gophers haven't had from a single quarterback in the last few seasons, if you can find a way to do that, it not only opens up and makes the defense respect you and stay true and not be loading boxes and what have you, but it will also open up the ground game for Darius Taylor and for the others on this team to make more explosive runs, which we didn't get a lot of last season. And especially if you can turn those explosive runs into home run hitting runs and get the touchdowns and get the scores and what have you, that can drain and zap any energy from an opposing team. So overall, if the Gophers can open it up a little bit more in the passing game, it should lead to a more effective run game. Now, on top of that, it should also help this running back room stay healthier, because they're not taking 40 carries a game. They're not taking all the grind and the pounding and the collisions of an entire full season, because they're able to pass the ball more and have less hats in the box, and all of a sudden there's less contact coming from you on every single play. Now, you add all those factors together, plus Max Brosmer has shown to throw it to his running backs more, and we've talked about that. Dylan Lobey just went to the Raiders in the NFL from New Hampshire because of the success he has found in the passing game, and that was with Max Brosmer. Now, that was an element that Minnesota did more of this past year, like I had mentioned earlier, but probably still not enough, especially for the fact that when Minnesota did throw the ball to their running backs, they often found first down opportunities. They often found positive yardage plays, and good things happened almost every single time. So you get the ball in Darius Taylor's hands, you get the ball in C.A. Bangura's hands on the outside in the run or in the pass game, that can open up everything in this offense and help you be more successful in the long run. Now, the third and final point of make or break for the Gophers in 2024 is none other than, it's hard for me to say it because I don't know how realistic it's going to be, but I want to say that it is playing to win the game, taking risks, taking shots, taking a chance, especially in the games against Michigan, USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, games where maybe you won't be favored, but you're going in there and laying it all on the line, taking the risk, taking the shot, trying to run the score up and put yourself in the position to be a little risky in order to win the game, as opposed to playing conservatively and cautiously and hoping you don't lose the game. I think if the Gophers can take that mindset, take that approach, and really shift it towards playing to win the game and taking some risks down the stretch. Now, I'm not saying go for it every fourth down. I'm not saying try to go for it in your own territory and try to get short yardage first downs. I'm not saying any of that. Now, can that happen? Depending on the given situation, depending on the team you're playing and what have you, then maybe that's what it calls for. But overall, it's not sitting with your tail tucked between your legs and hoping that if you just always punt it or always take the short yardage or don't put the ball in the air because you don't want to put it in harm's way, or if you're playing a top 10 school and you're in a dog for dog, pound for pound fight at halftime, but you've been playing conservatively, to open it up in the second half and really take a shot and try to zap the energy and take the momentum and push it forward and get your audience or your crowd fired up or make their crowd silent and really help your team thrive off of that momentum. Now, I know Coach Fleck doesn't believe in momentum, but momentum is a huge thing. And I think a lot of it comes from playing to win the game. So that is my point number 3. If the Gophers play aggressively and play to win as opposed to playing not to lose, I think that could be make or break for the Gopher season, especially in the games where they will be underdogs. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is that factor of underdogs. It's about the Gophers schedule in 2024 and why I absolutely love how this schedule worked out for the Gophers. We're going to dive into those thoughts to end today's show coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, I'm going to tell you why I absolutely love this Minnesota schedule for 2024. Now, a lot of folks are saying, oh, it's a super difficult schedule and what have you. I think last year's schedule was harder. I think last year's top teams were more difficult and what have you. But this year's schedule, it does have challenges. It does have some difficulty. And according to FPI on ESPN, Minnesota has the 41st hardest schedule. So it's a still top 50 hardest schedule of the 130 plus FBS teams. But I am thankful for how difficult it is and how it sets up for Minnesota, because when you're looking at the breakdown of it all, things could be much, much worse. In fact, if you look at the possibilities that could have happened in 2024, you could have gotten Oregon and Ohio State, or you could have got one of those two schools. But those are the top 2 schools in the Big Ten as seen heading into the season, and you get to avoid both of them. So I really like looking across the landscape of who Minnesota could have had in the Big Ten and who they ended up avoiding. Not getting Oregon, not getting Ohio State is a blessing in this year where you're trying to bounce back. On top of that, Michigan should still be good, but they won't be as dominant as they have been the last couple of years, or especially not as dominant as they were last year as the national champions. And then Penn State is the only game on the schedule that I look at, and I'm like, Minnesota probably doesn't have a chance in that game. Now, the Michigan game, it probably definitely skews toward Michigan, probably 80% in favor of Michigan, but it's a game, again, that you don't necessarily have a 0% shot on. And then aside from those 2 games, Minnesota's remaining games are all winnable games to some extent. In those games that they might be underdogs, I'm talking about Wisconsin on the road. I'm talking about USC at home. I'm talking about who else? Maybe Iowa, except for it's at home, so it might be more of a 50-50 game. Who else is on the schedule that is not coming to mind right now? Regardless, those ones that might be more difficult in the so-called betting standards or what have you, the betting lines and what have you, I think it'll be more 60-40 as the odds, with Minnesota being more of a 40% on those unfavored games than it is anything higher than that, which means it's a much more closer 50-50 coin flip type game than it is a true underdog. And on top of that, we've already talked about on this show, we like how the schedule laid out for who is playing or who you are playing and where. So UNC, that could be a difficult non-conference game, but you get it at home to open the season. Then on top of that, you got Iowa, but you get them at home this season. Wisconsin, you get them on the road, but at the same time, it's the final game of the year. And the last 3 times you have gone to Wisconsin, you have either won the game or it has come down to the wire in OT for a loss. So that is an environment that the Gophers feel typically somewhat successful in. On top of that, you get who else is at home? We got UCLA on the road, but that's not too bad. You get your maybe hopeful upset against a USC team that could still be feeling the transition pains. You get them at home. Your road games are UCLA, who I think is going to be one of the worst teams of the conference. A road game at Illinois, who doesn't really have a dangerous or hostile environment by any means, and really is still working to get their fans to come out to the games. You got Rutgers on the road, but at the same time, again, not a fan base that makes you feel like it's a hostile or toxic environment. So overall, these away games that the Gophers are playing, the only super difficult away game is that Michigan game, in which you already have lower odds in. You get Penn State at home. That's a nice one to have at home. But overall, this schedule feels favorable for the Gophers. You can't ask for better than that. Plus, UNC is a respectable non-conference, so people can't claim that you played cupcakes the entire season. Overall, I love how the schedule has shaped out, and if the Gophers want to bounce back, if they want to make a name for themselves, if they want to take advantage of the opportunity, this schedule is one that should help hopefully play in their favor. I would take the over on wins on any sportsbook line out there for the Gophers because I think they are going to at least get 6 wins and get to a bowl game. All the lines I've seen have been under that. So overall, I like the schedule. I like how it's laid out. I like who ended up being the Big Ten opponents, and I like the non-conference. And when you're talking about the non-conference as well, Rhode Island, Max Brosmer played them last year. He lost in an overtime game with New Hampshire, but he had over 400 yards passing. So a familiar team, maybe to help get this offense in the passing game cooking in the very early stages in the year, so that way you can carry that over into future ones. I love how this game laid out. How do you feel about the schedule? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your worries. Let me know your concerns, all down in the comments below on YouTube. But while you're there, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can tap in for your Gophers daily content moving forward. And that's going to do it for us on today's show. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you taking the time out. As always, I am going to say, row the boat, Sky Uma, go Gophers, and please don't forget to hit subscribe.